Hey, welcome to Bid It, Bill It. If this is your first time, this is a channel dedicated to paint contractors, handymen, and anybody in the trades that needs to create invoices or quotes for their customers. I wrote an app called Bid It, Bill It, Bid It, Bill It. It's in the Apple App Store and it's free. You can download it and use it at any point in time. I'll tell you more about that in other videos. Today's video is going to focus on a lot of the areas over a 30+ year career that I learned you just need to remember, and when you don't, you end up cheating yourself out of profit and time. When you walk through an exterior or an interior of a home, you usually write yourself some notes, right? And then you go back and put that in your bid. Hopefully you got everything. But let's just say the customer is getting multiple bids. This tends to happen when someone's looking at trying to save money, right? If I'm walking through an interior and I see furniture, let's say it's a media or a living room with large couches and chairs, I want to ask immediately, are you moving these pieces of furniture? Do you expect me to do that? Or do you want me to work around them, cover them up? So if you've ever done that before, you know it takes a lot more time to move around furniture and cover it up. And if you get something on it, there's always liability, right? So I would put that in my notes on my actual quote for the customer. Just write it in. Hey, customer says they're going to move it. And anytime someone's getting multiple bids, things get confused. So it just helps you set the standard. Also, if you walk into a house that's say 2-story and there's an atrium in the middle with a taller ceiling, do you have the ladders in your possession that you can deal with that? Obviously, taller ladders will help you, but also slows the process down the taller you have to get up there. Do you need to rent scaffolding, a lift in some cases if it's tall enough? Obviously, if you don't factor those expenses, they're hard to recover on the backside of that. Exterior tips, some of the things I look for and have missed over the years for shrubbery. So I've had cases where you drive up and you need to put a machine all the way to the back of the house, but you can't get there because there's shrubbery or there's trees in the way. How do you get that there, right? So it's either going to take you longer or you're going to have to get someone to help you move it back there. So make sure you note that. Are there trees and shrubbery that needs to be cut back? Who's responsible for that? You want to write that in your notes as well. One thing that I found over the years, if I notice someone who has an elaborate garden or a bed of flowers, make sure that you note that, especially if they're against the house, they're likely going to get disturbed or even destroyed, and make sure that they understand that and put that in writing and maybe get a signature on that one, because people get very upset about obviously expensive shrubbery and flowering. Pressure washing, always a good way to add value and revenue to your invoice, but you want to watch out for those plants when you're washing down houses, especially if you have to use a chemical to say get some mold or something heavy off of grease or something off of a house. You want to note in there on the shrubbery and especially flowers, if you have to use a chemical, a chlorine or a bleach base, that they probably will get disturbed and or die, and you got to do your best to cover that up. So make sure that's all in writing when you do that. Also ask for your benefit. Hey, they have a deck back there, a pool deck or a walkway. Hey, you want me to clean that off, or a small fence? Great way to add value to your invoice. Prep work, it's said 80% is prep work. I feel sometimes it's 100+%. But how much sanding does this exterior or interior need? Is it new wood? Is it old wood? Does it need to be replaced and then nail holes filled? Spackle nail holes in the walls. Sometimes people want to pull pictures off, but they don't want the nail holes because they want to put the pictures back up where they were. So make sure you note that. Drywall patches in a house are a great way, if you know how to do it, a great way to add value and revenue to your invoice as well. Ask about that. Priming, caulk, how much caulk? I learned something the hard way. I moved from western Texas into central Texas and then out to South Florida. Dry times in South Florida, especially right now during the summer and the humid months, is much longer in many cases. So if you're working in an older home, like a 40-year-old home, you put paint on a wall. If there's decades of paint, lots of paint on that wall, it's not going to dry as quick as it would on a freshly sheetrock wall, obviously. So you may have to factor for that. So maybe a time factor in an older home in a humid area that there may not be somewhere else. Something I learned the hard way. How many finish coats? So back in my day, when we would do exteriors, any surface that was going to have sun exposure, say a garage door, facings, fascia board, we always performed a 2-coat function there. So 2 coats, one could be spray, but one certainly was a brush coat on all those heavy surfaces like that. That's how we factored it in. You know, there's you have to calculate for your overall expenses. Gas is far more expensive than it used to be. Your insurance, your upkeep, your maintenance on your vehicles. If you work in and around a city, like a large city, you may have to have parking fees if you're doing commercial or even residential. There's residential homes in downtowns that people live in. You may have to factor that in. Those all add up over time. I've been caught before when I lived in Dallas-Fort Worth. If someone wanted you, say, if I lived on the Fort Worth side, if somebody in Dallas wanted something, well, it may not be that far as actual mileage, but in traffic, it could be hours. So it could really tie your day up. You may have to leave earlier, leave later. So you want to factor all those in. Supplies. I'm going to show you my app at the end of the video and how I try to help you remember some of those things, but in every category that I've created, so an exterior, interior, pressure washing, odd jobs, handyman, special areas, I put a supply list in there. You want to remember things like tape, sanding paper, sanding disc, drops, plastic, caulk, primers, roller covers, paint, obviously mud and texture. I did myself a favor one year and just factored up all my supplies versus just my labor cost. And I had never, this was years ago, I'd never peeled those back and looked at them individually. And I was shocked one year at how much money that I lost myself because I didn't factor in, you know, rolls of tape, rolls of paper, roller covers. I just kind of factored that in my head with the labor cost. It's significant. You may already be doing that, but if you haven't, you might want to add that to your checklist in your mind. I'm going to go into the app now and show you how I try to help you remember as much as possible. But again, thanks for stopping by. So now let's walk through the Bid It Bill It app as I told you I would. I designed this as a paint contractor to help you remember things as you're walking through a bid. So if you write these things down and then go back to this app and figure it out, that's fine. Or if you want to just use the app as you're walking through the customer site, either way. So let's talk about the interior tips I gave you. So let's click on Living and Media, second one down. In that scenario, I said, hey, is there furniture that needs to be moved? Are there taller ceilings? So if you go down about 6 or 7 down, there's vaulted ceilings area right there. So you click on that. You could enter the cost for extra tall ceilings or for ladders or something like that. You could create hourly rates. In the scenario 2, where it says single color above that, let's just say you wanted to add scaffolding there. You can hold down next to any of these labels and change the label to reflect anything you want. So let's just say scaffolding. Okay. Now that label is scaffolding. So you click on it, add a quantity, and let's say it's going to be 4 days at a cost of $250 a day. Let's just say. Let's call it a lift in here. Okay? There. Now that will show up on your invoice or your bill or your quote here when you go out next and finish it out. The one thing I really like about my app I designed is the materials list. This just helps you remember commonly used painting supplies. And I've changed some of these as I've gone through and done demos. So like door and frame I've changed out. But you could put anything you want in here. So again, any of these labels, if you hold down, you can change it. Let's just call this one latex. Okay. It's as simple as that. Change the label, put the quantity, the price, and any notes on it. So that would be that interior tip. On the exterior tip, same exact concept. Same bullet points, same type of thing. You can change any label by holding down on it, change the label, and then put your cost and quantity in and any notes. I have hourly rates, scaffolding rentals, and then again, a materials list. This kind of coincides with using exterior materials, but very similar. And again, change anything you'd like. So every area I use, or created, you has a materials list to it, or you can change it to create a materials list. So pressure washing, I added a very specific area because I have guys that actually use this that are just pressure washing. So these are commonly washed areas, and you, again, can change. And I left 5 areas at the bottom to create custom areas that you may, say a boat or something like that, a car. I also have a handyman services and a custom services area at the bottom. So I have some guys that use this that are auto mechanics. So they put auto repair labor, attic installation, and then anything else you'd want. And then again, a materials list inside there as well. Custom. I designed this hopefully to help you not lose money, to help you make money and not forget, things like tape and sanding paper and all those things that you would normally just kind of factor into your labor. Factor that into the whole cost, and at the end of the year, you come out on top. Thanks for stopping by and using Bid It, Bill It.